Hello and welcome. This is Existential Deep Talks with the Motivator. How are you doing this evening, this morning, this afternoon, this night, whatever time and place you happen to be in? Together, let's begin weaving a story we can be seeing. As I'm speaking this message, I hope and I deliver my intention that you'll be experiencing the essence in your own way as the information channels to you today. The message I'm delivering in this motivation moment is simply a message of something sort of understanding that came about to me in a way that I would call sort of like an epiphany, where immediately your understanding, your perception, your inner comprehension, the way you perceive about the world, your life, reality all around you is shifted. It becomes to a new clarity, right? When you have those moments where you suddenly think differently with like a aha, where you didn't know something before but now you know. I think what I've discovered is something about what I've my inner journey of sharing what I know in the music. My goal is behind all of that is that what I see in the existential level, meaning existence, right, is that we are a species. And if you look from another point of view about look at our species, humans, as the way we look at other species, right? Like dogs or birds, right? We would think that they're not as intelligent or they can't do the things that we can do because we're more sophisticated and advanced in our capabilities, right? A dog can't have a conversation with another dog and hold the door for each other, right? They're just not equipped with those type of capabilities. But we are. So we look upon that species as less developed, right? They're inferior in some ways. What would you think if you were from another point of view and you saw our species? You would want to constantly consider, right? Or you would automatically consider the ways that we need to advance and continue developing in our own evolution, out of primal instincts. You would think, how do these humans get smarter? Imagine you were another species, but not yourself, right? If you looked upon other areas of the world that are less advanced, less gifted, third world countries in poverty, you automatically you perceive the area as needing some sort of advancement. There needs to be more ingenuity, right? Ingeniousness. There has to be productivity, progress, how they further develop. And when you see us, I want you to consider as a whole, I want you to consider the same way. How can humans continue advancing, progressing, evolving, right? I think we rarely or we overall lack the instinct to consider that on a daily basis with the way we govern ourselves and we act. Because I think a lot of us forget to, or we just lack that instinct because oftentimes day by day we're sort of caught up more in the personal, right? You got to advance your money, you got to advance your living situation, you want to grow, you want to buy a new object, something that's there to grow your circumstance in some sort of way. But I'm saying out of the personal, think on the larger scale, of the entire species, the whole world, and have that moment, have those moments more often where you consider where we need to go. There are some other existential matters that come up when one does consider that, like save the planet, global warming, stuff like that. These are real social issues, right? What is going on also though on a smaller scale in the day to day? It's everything's based on consumerism. And the consumerism, it's a supply and demand type of principle, right? You are a consumer, but you're also working in some sort of field that's supplying, in demanding. And as a consumer, you demand more, but you as a person in society, you work in some sort of field that's supplying. You supply a service somewhere, wherever your job is, you're contributing to the way society functions. I like us to consider that more so on a human level of the social life and what we can achieve together. And that's world peace. That's the ultimate goal, right? So you have a personal goal, you have a world goal. Well, what's even beyond that? It's as far as you can go beyond the world is the space, right? Outer space. Envision what you want to create. That far out is where you essentially can imagine anything, right? Imagine one of those planets out there, which we, for as far as we understand, doesn't have life, or doesn't have life form as we know it here on Earth, human life form. But there are like blank canvases in my view of a planet, right? Imagine you were a god and you saw your own species develop on one of these planets. And if you were there, if you were that god, right, and you could have watched the species of whatever, blank canvas of your design develop and further themselves on a planet, what would you have in mind for them, and what would you want for them to achieve in order to further and progress as the within their capabilities? What would you imagine? And just imagine that. And if you were to imagine that, right, giving life to this design, this other species which can create their own world, if you were to observe that and it came from your ingenuity, you would be a god. And if you were that god giving life to these creatures of your design, you would be giving life to them. You would be a source that gives life. What would you be? You would be a star, because you're the sun of that planet. You're the sunlight giving life. Sunlight gives life, and it creates. So you would be that star. Imagine that. And that's as far as we can take it, because the biggest thing you could possibly conceive of in the entire world, in your whole mind, outside of the world, in the universe, is a star. Unless you're going to conceive yourself to be a planet, but our sun is larger than the Earth. So the biggest thing you can conceive of is a star, and greater than that is the entire universe, which we don't know the extent of. And then beyond that, you would imagine the only thing bigger than that is God, right? What could be more bigger than that? And I'm saying, essentially, if you are imagining yourself to be a star, you are imagining yourself to be a god, because God gives life. And if you look at religions with the theology behind it, there seems to be some sort of, you can attribute some sort of metaphorical understanding to God and the sun, because it gives life, right? And other cultures, like Native Americans, used to worship the sun. And it seems to be some of the root basis for what all religions are based upon. Because, when the sun's gone, or when it goes down at night, it gets cold, and that's the dark. And the dark is the evil, right? But when the light is here, it's the good. It gives life. You can see, it gives you warmth. You're alive. Without it, you'd be dead. So, the sun is very significant when it comes to religions. It's an astro-theological basis, which they're all linked by, all religions. But I'm just basically going off the concept, God itself. To be a star is to be that big, and it's to share whatever you can possibly share with the rest of the world. And on an existential level, you're going to go down in history one day, right? You're going to be deceased. You've contributed something. You did something while you were here, this time period, this time and place, this point in history where people will look back on these days and they'll consider, what did these people do? They'll think with that one perception, like, wow, this time period, the 2020s, you know? Not the 1920s. We look upon the 1920s and we look back and we say, wow, look at these people. They all had those cool hats on. Jazz music was popping. Prohibition happened, When we think like they didn't know that they were going through a certain time period. Because in our minds, we're the ones perceiving that time period with the cultural thoughts that we have that identify it, it gives it the character of those times. But we ourselves are also in a time period where we don't know how people before us or after us will consider us. So to have that thought in mind, that observation from this point of view now in the present, that one day will be in history, one day will be part of the future, and then this will be the past. To consider that while you're still present and you do things that will make it leave your mark, leave your impression in history, is amazing. Now, I'm not saying you gotta do anything grand and spectacular that makes the papers or go down in history in that sort of way. I'm saying literally we have the ability to post a video on a medium that could exist for centuries, theoretically. It already has lasted for decades, YouTube. So I just think that's incredible to consider that, and that's a sense. That's all in one sense of existentialism. So I guess there's a lot to be said about this era. Returning to music after this 2-year hiatus, basically, because the world was just suffering from the coronavirus and an election and racial tension. There seems to be a lot of ramped up issues in the news and the media, which don't really hit us on a personal level, at least not as much as you would consider when you watch TV, because it's more in our minds than it is in our everyday lives. So to consider that these issues are hitting us on a massive scale and kind of defining our lives in this time is really, it's a bit ludicrous when you think that the media has that much power to write the narrative for our lives in history. And I'm not saying it's completely false, but I'm just saying to consider that they have the ability to stamp this point in time with that information, their power. I just think that's a little silly, because we the people are the ones controlling our course in life, and we don't need to be labeled by another source, a third party. We the people can just be telling ourselves with the power we have that we're here to reach a new paradigm. We're here to make that necessary step in evolution. We are the stars, and we will keep shining on and making a difference in this world one step at a time. And I believe that the power with music to reach people on a massive level has always been has been a catalyst for what happens in history, for how people define themselves, how people think, how people leave their mark, how people make a difference in the world. Music has always been there to do that. And it's something deeper that perhaps 200 years from now, they'll be like, oh yeah, they didn't know that music is blah, blah, blah. Like they'll have this crazy discovery about sound, and like all of a sudden our whole civilization would be advanced. Like we'll be lifting rocks with fucking people playing guitar. You know what I mean? Shit like that which we can't perceive of now, but one day we'll get there. Like, because they always make advancements in technology, right? Or any sort of discovery. we're there. We're in the middle of that, of doing stuff with people using music for mental health. I use it for more for spiritual health because I don't see the person as just a mind and a body, right? I see the person as having a soul, spirit, and with that you bring about health in all areas, mind, body, and spirit, all together as soul. And that's my profound understanding in my utilization for music. And everything else is based on the content of how to share a message that's worth communicating to the masses, because that's what the power of music can do, and that's what it should be utilized for in its most functional manner. Like, that is the best thing you can possibly do with it. If it's going to reach a massive amount of people, which music has the ability to do, you might as well make it worth it. Like, what message would you want to communicate to a massive amount of people? You know, I watched the Super Bowl halftime show last year, and they're glorifying Eminem and Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent, Lil Wayne, Mary J. Blige. They're glorifying these people when the content of their song is motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre. Like a song that's like 20 years old. And everyone watches the Super Bowl. There's like tens of millions of people watching the Super Bowl, and the message they want to communicate is motherfuckers act like they forgot about Dre. Like, what kind of fucking... You know, it's like someone just selected, hey, this is a popular song. This hit number one on the billboards in 2001. Let's play it at the Super Bowl halftime show. And that's what they want to communicate. You know, it's ridiculous. To think that families are hearing that. You know, we didn't do that years ago. Like, we did, but I'm saying, I swear that people... I guess this is more like my speculation, but I swear people were considerate that they were going to reach individuals on a massive scale. And with that consideration, you know, they said something that was uplifting. You remember Teddy Roosevelt's speech? The only, or not Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That message right there, it's like he had this sense that he's speaking in front of a crowd of people, right? And he's uplifting the spirits of his country. Granted, that's a little different than the Super Bowl, but I'm saying it should be an automatic understanding that if you're going to speak something to a massive amount of people, make it worth it. Make it of something of good value. And I just see music like that all the time. And it's like that on a, the macrocosm, but on the microcosm, people are sharing songs. Music helps them speak another language, because it's like, this is who I am internally, and I'm gonna express that. I'm gonna draw that out of me. I'm gonna do a different kind of walk, right? I'm gonna grow 10 feet tall in this song because my presence is known. I'm going dun 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 dun, and that's making me bigger. That's making me larger. That's a whole nother dimension to something that's not physical, right? Music is completely spirit. It's sound. You can't actually touch sound, right? Maybe you can touch a sound wave, you can alter whatever, but you can't physically grab a B note and hold it, and while you're holding it, it's going bing 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 bing. You have to have other instruments in a combination in the byproduct. You have to have other physical objects and having some sort of combination of an action in order to have a byproduct be the sound. That, phenomenologically speaking, is amazing. And to think that you're sort of doing that with other things, right? You're doing that with, if I take this pill and I eat it, there's a chemical reaction, and the byproduct of that is my dopamine receptors are inhibited, or my serotonin goes up, and now I feel better, my mood's better, and my mental health is altered. My mental state is altered, perhaps for the purpose of greater mental health. you're doing that with music, right? And it's not direct. There's the point where you're you're absorbing sounds coming through one of your senses, and that sound itself has an effect, and then you interpret whatever is in addition to that sound, whatever else ingredients are in the recipe. You're perceiving the lyrics, the words, right? And the melody and the rhythm is giving you some sort of area that you can join in on, right? Like when you say, I was feeling that, or I like that song, or that hit me deep. I really feel the words, something like that. You're becoming a part of it. Your emotions are aligned with the feeling of the song, right? You had to interpret on some sort of level. You're interpreting that expression, that feeling, and that feeling is giving you information that kind of does it becomes you coalesce with that information in a way that's you could be receptive to it, and then that's where the healing begins. A healing in a sense of an application. Like this represents the sound, right? This represents the sounds that coming at me, and then wow. Now I applied that to what I am. I applied that external resource to what I am. And now internally there's some sort of effect going on. There's a chemistry, right? And that chemistry is creating a new part of me. That chemistry is healing an area, right? Or that chemistry is combining. It's causing me to become one with whatever that source is, and now I embody it, and it does its thing, and I am better because of the music's intervention.